This is Death by Gold Doubloon, a hilarious, feel-good, cozy mystery, Island Whodunnit Book 5. Written by Tess Marlowe and narrated by Sarah Smith. Chapter 1. The late afternoon sun hung low over San Malvino, casting long golden streaks across the front yard. Reg had ditched his flip-flops hours ago and was now entrenched in a strategic lounging posture in the hammock, one leg dangling, a cold beer sweating in his hand. Bombay, stretched in the shade of the bougainvillea, twitched now and then, probably chasing a crab in his dreams, the kind of lazy, golden hour that made you believe nothing could possibly go wrong. Alex sat at the patio table with a half-melted glass of iced tea and a dog-eared notebook open in front of her. She was scribbling something between a journal entry and a grocery list when movement across the road caught her eye. "Okay," she said, capping her pen. "Don't look now." Reg didn't move. "Already not looking. But I need confirmation. Is that Gary? Or has someone stolen his body and dressed it in military drag?" Reg lazily opened one eye toward the road and nearly dropped his beer. Gary was trudging up the gravel lane like a man preparing to liberate a small dictatorship. He wore an oversized tactical vest that looked like it came from a yard sale hosted by a paranoid prepper, a helmet with a flashlight duct-taped to the top, and brand-new hiking boots with the tags still attached. Several mismatched gardening tools were stuffed into the loops of a nylon utility belt, and Polly the parrot flapped along on his shoulder, sporting a tiny red bandana and his usual expression of gleeful contempt. The pièce de résistance? A full-size steel shovel dragging behind him like a reluctant pet. Reg sat up in the hammock, squinting. What in the 7 bureaucracies of hell is that man wearing? Gary beamed as he approached. "Evenin', operatives." "Oh, no," Alex murmured. "Oh, yes," Reg exclaimed. Polly squawked, "Ahoy, Matey! Drop anchor!" Gary stopped at the edge of their yard and stabbed the shovel into the ground like he was planting a flag on the moon. "You're looking at the newest expedition leader of Operation Calico. Is that printed on your medical bracelet, or did your fever dreams finally unionize?" Reg squinted at him. Alex blinked. "Is that military surplus?" "Military adjacent," Gary said proudly. "eBay, ex-mercenary, $50 and a signed photo." "And the boots?" "Garage find. Never worn. Possibly cursed." Alex tilted her head. "And where exactly are you headed dressed like a budget explorer?" Gary straightened to his full, modest height and pulled a Polaroid from the Velcro chest pocket. "You ever heard of Old Man, what's his name? Tall guy, smells like turnips, lives out by the cliffs?" "Old Man Turnip?" Alex offered. Polly flapped her wings and shrieked, "Smells like doom!" No, that's just what I call him," Gary said. "Real name's something sharp. Crag, something that sounds like he bites people. Anyway, he's a recluse, lives in this hut near the South Cliffs, completely off-grid. Grows his own veggies, purifies his own water. I don't think he has electricity there. Says the government's been using GMO corn to implant frequency modulators into our gallbladders." Reg nodded. "Naturally." "Well, the other day he was digging a new allotment bed and, bam, he hits something. Not a root, not a rock, a bottle, and guess what's inside it?" Gary leaned in dramatically. "A treasure map." He held out the Polaroid like it was a national relic. Alex took it carefully. The photo showed what looked like a water-stained scrap of parchment, jagged at the edges, inked with crude lines and a faded compass rose. There were marks that could have been coordinates or nonsense, and a large X smudged near the corner. "Could be anything," Reg said, peering over her shoulder. "Might be someone's lost art project." "No way. That's real cartographic ink. Look at the feathering. And there's the compass rose." Gary tapped the photo with reverence. "Old Man Crab, let's just call him that, says it lines up with the cliffs and that weird lion rock outcrop, and he says, and I quote, 'No one else on this island speaks sane, so he invited me to dig it up with him.'" "You," Reg pointed, "the man who once got stuck in a folding chair for 3 hours?" Gary puffed up. "I'm more capable than I appear." Polly flapped again, this time launching a feather into the air. "Dig! Dig! Dig up the loot!" Reg rubbed his temples. So this old guy you barely know finds a mysterious map in his garden, and instead of reporting it to literally anyone with a functioning adult brain, he invites you to dig it up? You? "I'm honored, too," Gary said solemnly. Alex handed back the Polaroid. "Okay, let's pretend for a second that this isn't another one of your wormhole-fueled hallucinations. What do you need all that gear for?" Gary patted the vest. "In case of cave-ins, or sand wasps, or, hypothetically, ghost pirates." "Of course," Alex said, rising. "Reg, you bringing the popcorn, or shall I?" "Give it 15 minutes," Reg muttered. "He'll be back with a sprained ankle and another imaginary curse." Gary started off again, shovel bouncing on the gravel behind him. Polly shouted over his shoulder, "The treasure is real, cowards!" They stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Reg sighed. "What's the over-under on us having to rescue him before sunset?" "Pretty sure I'll get a text saying bring gauze and betadine within the hour." Reg took a long sip of beer. "One day," he said, "we're going to spend an entire evening without a conspiracy theorist in military cosplay showing us photos of cursed artifacts." Alex settled back into her chair. "Nah, you'd be bored." Bombay groaned in his sleep and twitched again, this time like he was burying something, probably for the best. Chapter 2. Reg flipped the last page of his magazine, wondering what rhymed with idiot with a shovel, when his phone rang. He squinted at the screen. Gary Mobile. He exhaled. "Place your bets." Alex didn't even look up from her book. 5-1, he's stuck in a tree. Again. Reg answered. "Gary!" "Reg, he's dead!" Reg yanked the phone away from his ear. Bombay lifted his head from the porch and let out a low, unhappy huff. Gary's voice was a panicked squawk. "He's dead, man. Old Man Crab is dead. Blood knife, real knife. Oh God, I'm gonna be next." "Okay, breathe," Reg said, already standing. "What the hell happened?" "I got here at the time he said, right? Right on the dot. 7:04, maybe 7:06 if you count the moment I had to dodge that feral goat near his garden." Gary. "And I walk into his hut and he's face down in a pool of his own hemoglobin with a knife in his back the size of a machete." Reg put the phone on speaker. Alex, already up and gathering her bag, mouthed, "Knife in the back?" "Why didn't you call the police?" Reg asked. "I came on the golf cart. Mendoza swore she'd take my driver's license if she caught me on the main roads again. She said last time was my final warning. Besides, she's your friend, right? And I'm freaking out and I don't want to die today, so please, pretty please with electrolytes on top, come get me." Reg groaned like a man with a chronic migraine, and a very bright light pointed right at him. "Where are you exactly?" "The hut near the cliffs. You can't miss it. There's a big ugly wind chime that sounds like someone strangling a cow." Reg ended the call and looked at Alex. "Ready for a moonlit corpse run?" "I got my flask," she said dryly, "and gum. You know Gary. Panic breath like pickled trash." On the way, Reg dialed Mendoza. She picked up on the third ring with all the warmth of a border checkpoint agent. "Unless one of you is bleeding or on fire." "We've got a homicide." Silence. Then, "You're kidding." "Wish I were?" Gary found Old Man Crab, real name still unknown, face down with a knife in his back. "You're with him now?" "Heading there. He didn't want to call you directly because of the golf cart thing." "Oh, for..." Mendoza took a breath. "I was going to take tomorrow off. One single day. Beach chair, pina colada, noise-canceling headphones. Am I cursed? Do I offend the spirits of this island somehow?" "You do tend to get offensive." "I'll be there in 20. I'll bring Lucian. Tell Gary not to touch anything. He's probably vibrating in a corner." "Good. Tell him to stay that way." The hut was as described, a lopsided rectangle of weather-beaten wood tucked between two scrubby trees and a dune that looked like it had dreams of becoming a cliff. The cow chime clanked mournfully in the breeze. Reg parked the Jeep just off the dirt track and stepped out with Alex and Bombay. Polly's voice hit them before anything else. "Murder! Murder! Get a lawyer!" "Lovely," Alex murmured, the avian town crier. Gary was slumped just outside the open door of the hut, his back against the wall, knees drawn up to his chest. His helmet was gone. His tactical vest was smeared with something dark that might have been blood or barbecue sauce. Polly paced on a makeshift perch beside him, a rusty folding chair with duct tape on one leg. Reg crouched. "Gary, you okay?" Gary looked up, wild-eyed. "He's dead, Reg, like really dead. Not faking it for taxes, dead." "We'll need to check him out. Did you touch him?" "I touched nothing, I swear on Polly's life. And you know how much I love this bird." Polly hissed. "Not enough to clean my cage, you freeloader." Reg stood. "Alex, give him the flask." She handed Gary the flask and the gum and smiled apologetically. "Just in case, you want to feel minty fresh." Then to Reg, "Let's see what we've got." They stepped into the hut. It was a mess, papers everywhere. A shelf of pickled vegetables had been knocked over, glass crunching underfoot. A small wood stove sat cold in the corner, and a threadbare cot had been flipped on its side. The air reeked of pickle brine, old books, and the unmistakable iron tang of blood. And in the middle of the room, just as Gary had described, was the body of Old Man Crab. Face down, knife between the shoulder blades, blood dried in a wide halo beneath him. The man's wild gray beard was streaked with something dark, his hand outstretched like he'd been trying to reach something. Reg noted dirt under his fingernails, a thin gash across one ankle, and the faint glint of a chain peeking from his shirt collar. Alex crouched beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene. Stab wound looks fatal, no signs of defensive wounds on the hands, so either he knew the killer or he never saw it coming. "Map's not here," Reg said, glancing around, "unless it's buried under the sauerkraut jars." Alex's brow furrowed. No wallet either. Outside, Polly screeched again, "Blood and betrayal!" Reg muttered, "That bird's going to be a witness, isn't it?" Alex stood. At this point, he might make a better one than Gary. They heard tires crunching gravel. Mendoza arrived in her island-issue SUV with Lucian, already snapping on gloves. She strode toward them like a woman whose day-off plans had been just murdered. "Please tell me this is just an unfortunate mannequin accident," she said as she stepped into the hut. Reg stepped aside. "Afraid not." Mendoza swore in Spanish under her breath. "I was going to sleep in tomorrow. No alarm, no badge, no caffeine-induced stress ulcers." Lucian let out a low whistle as he took in the room. Yikes. "Secure the perimeter," Mendoza said. "No one goes in or out, especially not the parrot." Polly shrieked from outside, "I know what you did." Mendoza leaned over the body. "Knife's probably from his own kitchen. Looks like a quick, messy job. Someone panicked." "And took the map," Reg added. Mendoza looked up sharply. "What map?" Reg gave a quick rundown of Gary's story, the alleged pirate map, the invitation, the photo, the timing. Alex handed over the Polaroid Gary had shown them earlier. Mendoza studied it, unimpressed. "This could be a hoax." "Could be," Reg said, "but it's a hoax that ends with a dead man." Mendoza stepped back and dialed her phone. "I'm calling the coroner. Get the body out of the heat. We'll go through the hut tomorrow. Right now, I want statements. Probably from the parrot, too." Lucia nodded. "On it." Mendoza rubbed her eyes. "A treasure hunt with a body count. That's what this is turning into. Exactly what I don't need on this godforsaken island." Alex looked at her. "You ever think about transferring somewhere boring?" "Like where? Back to mainland? Bodies show up there too. At least here, I get beach access and good rum." Outside, Polly screamed again. "Murder! Murder! Gonna die! Bad juju!" Mendoza muttered, "Yeah, well, join the club." Chapter 3. By the time the morning sun climbed over the eastern ridge of San Malvino, Reg had already walked Bombay, brewed his special strong kind of coffee, the kind that could double as a floor varnish, and stocked the small fridge with soft and not-so-soft drinks. That was his "we might have visitors" setup. Alex, sitting cross-legged in one of the canvas chairs, sipped from a mug that read, "Not before coffee unless it's murder written in glitter," another of Shannon's artsy creations. She looked peaceful. Reg didn't trust it. "All right," he said. 10-to-1 odds Gary wakes up thinking he hallucinated the whole thing. Alex blew on her coffee. He didn't sleep. Polly kept yelling, "Stab, stab, stab," every time he nodded off. "God bless that bird." They didn't have to wait long. Mendoza's SUV rolled up 10 minutes later, kicking up a swirl of dusty hibiscus petals. She stepped out, looking even less amused than she had the night before, if such a thing was possible. Lucian followed with a tablet and a tired wave. "Morning," Reg said, saluting with his coffee. Mendoza didn't return it. "We're interviewing your favorite citizen now. You'll have to be more specific." She gave him a flat look and walked past to sit on the edge of the porch. "We ran prints through the system overnight," she said. "Nothing useful. His name was William Cragg, originally American, we think. 50 years ago, he came to San Malvino on a cargo ship from New Orleans. And then—" She made a flatlining gesture. "Nothing?" Alex asked. "No tax records, no bank accounts, no ID renewals, no known relatives. For the past 4 decades, he's been living like the Unabomber minus the manifesto. Off the grid in every way." Lucian leaned on the porch railing. "If Gary knows anything that can point us toward a motive or a suspect, we need it." Reg pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. "Calling him now? Fingers crossed he's not in the middle of constructing a tinfoil bunker." On the second ring, Gary answered with a hoarse, "Do I need to flee the island?" "You're fine. Probably. Come over. Mendoza wants to ask you a few things. And bring Polly." A pause. Then, "Polly said no, but I'll bribe him with plantains." Reg hung up and looked at Mendoza. "He's on his way. Give him 5 minutes and brace yourself. Alex says Polly screamed all night." She grimaced. "I've seen worse than sleep-deprived conspiracy theorists." Gary arrived as promised, looking like he hadn't changed clothes or showered. Polly rode on his shoulder with one wing tucked dramatically, like he was in mourning. "Polly's a little traumatized," Gary said. "He saw death, up close, smelled it, possibly tasted it. He's very curious." Polly squawked, "He's not napping!" Gary winced. "See? PTSD." Mendoza gestured to the chair beside her. "Sit, and no touching anything." Gary obeyed with the enthusiasm of a man on trial. Polly hopped down to Bombay's flank and started preening. Bombay endured it with the stoicism of a dog who'd seen worse. "So," Mendoza said, tapping her pen, "how long have you known William Cragg?" "Old Man Crab?" Gary scratched his neck. "About 4 years, I think, maybe 5. Time gets fuzzy when you don't believe in calendars." "Where'd you meet him?" "Bongo's. We were both regulars. Well, I'm a frequent regular. He came in once a month, like clockwork. We bonded over conspiracy theories. He didn't think the moon landing was faked, but he's sure it wasn't Armstrong." Mendoza blinked. "Right." "He never talked much," Gary went on. "Didn't like crowds. Thought too many cell phones in one room made your spleen hum." "Did he ever talk about family? Friends?" Gary shook his head. "Only ever said he stayed on the island for love, that it didn't work out. But he never gave a name or a detail. Just that he came here with a ship and stayed." Reg looked at Alex, who raised an eyebrow. A sailor turned hermit, haunted by a failed love. Romantic. Also a little creepy. "We need to know who that woman was," Mendoza said, rising. "She might have been the only person close enough to know if he had enemies, or anything about him, really." "Jimmy might know," Alex suggested. "If Cragg was a regular at Bongo's, there's a good chance he talked more after a couple of drinks." Mendoza nodded. "All right, let's go." Gary perked up. "Field trip?" "You're not driving," Mendoza snapped. Gary clutched his keys like a wounded child. "But the golf cart is a hybrid," Reg muttered. "That cart's barely alive." Bongo's wasn't quite open yet when they arrived, but the door was unlocked and the chairs already down. Jimmy was inside, wiping down the counter with a stained towel and humming the theme to Jaws under his breath. When he saw the group walk in, Mendoza's badge leading the charge, he paused, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Nobody's dead in here, right?" "Not yet," Mendoza said. "But we've got questions." Jimmy sighed and tossed the towel over his shoulder. "Coffee's fresh. You want answers? You'll need caffeine." They pulled up stools. Polly fluttered onto the bar and pecked at a peanut shell. "William Cragg," Mendoza said. "Tall guy, beard like a pirate, smelled like vinegar. Know him?" "Of course," Jimmy said. "Called him Captain Crazy. Came in once a month, drank my cheapest rum, never tipped. Still let him drink here. Something about him just, I don't know, made you feel like you were talking to a ghost." "He ever tell you why he stayed on the island?" Alex asked. Jimmy poured himself a cup. "Love. That's what he said. Came here on a cargo ship in the late 70s, fell in love with a woman, decided to stay. Rumor was she left him. Some say she married someone else. Some say she died. He never confirmed, just drank and disappeared again for another 4 weeks. "Name?" Mendoza pressed. Jimmy shook his head. "Never told me. Closest he came to opening up was saying, she really loved jazz." Alex raised a brow. "That narrows it down to about half the island." Gary leaned in. "What about the map?" Jimmy snorted. "That was the last time he was here. Looked so excited. Said he needed help. Recruited your man Gary." "Did he talk to anyone other than Gary and you?" Reg asked. Jimmy frowned. "I haven't noticed. He's not the talkative kind." Mendoza stood. "All right, we have 2 paths then. We find out who the woman was, and we follow the map ourselves. If it's real, someone killed for it. And if it's fake, someone still killed for it." Gary raised a hand. "Can I vote for the path that doesn't involve hiking?" Polly squawked, "Dig or die." Jimmy poured another cup of coffee. "Whatever this is, it's gonna be good for business. Rum and rumors, baby." Alex stood beside Reg. "Ready to chase pirate gold?" Reg sighed. "Just once I'd like a murder that doesn't involve shovels." Chapter 4. Lucian sat cross-legged on the floor of Reg and Alex's living room, surrounded by coffee mugs, a humming laptop, and a portable scanner he claimed was for field archaeology, though it still had a sticker that read, "Property of San Malvino Elementary School." The Polaroid of the treasure map was carefully pressed under a glass weight. On screen, a digitized version had been cleaned, cropped, and boosted into high resolution. "I swear," Lucian muttered, zooming in and out. "If I have to enhance one more smudge, I'm demanding hazard pay." Reg hovered behind him, holding a half-eaten empanada. "And you're sure you can get GPS coordinates off that thing?" Lucian didn't even look up. "Don't insult me. I once geotagged a 17th century Portuguese doodle from a goat-hide calendar." Alex sipped her coffee. "Is that why Mendoza had to apologize to the consulate?" Lucian grinned. "Possibly. Worth it." With a final keystroke, a satellite image popped up beside the map overlay. He adjusted the alignment, rotating slightly to match the jagged cliffs and oddly drawn ridgeline. "There," he said, tapping the screen. "The compass rose aligns with the lion-shaped rock formation in the national park. You follow the ridgeline southeast about 300 meters, and you hit this shallow depression." He zoomed in on what looked like a patch of dark green moss. "Looks like nothing," Reg muttered. "But on the map—" "X marks it," Alex finished. Reg crossed his arms. "Jungle terrain, great. I'll wear my boots with the least snake holes." "Already called the Park Service," Lucian said, smug. "We've got a guide. He's picking us up in—" He checked his phone. 7 minutes. Alex narrowed her eyes. "Gary's not coming, right?" He begged, and I told him absolutely not. Mendoza threatened to revoke his beach privileges. Reg smirked. "He'll follow us anyway." "Obviously," Alex agreed. Their guide arrived precisely on time in a faded green Park Service truck with one cracked headlight and a sticker that said, "Nature isn't trying to kill you, but it might." The man who hopped out was impossible to miss. Tall, sun-baked, wearing a neon-orange ranger vest over a t-shirt that said, "I licked a frog and all I got was enlightened." A machete hung from his belt, and his straw hat was adorned with feathers, beads, and what might have been a snake fang. "Y'all can call me Fern," he said cheerfully. "Short for Fernandito, but most folks just say Fern or, hey, stop that." He shook Reg's hand with the kind of grip that said he once fought an iguana and won. "You the ghost hunters?" "Treasure," Lucian said. "Possibly murder, no ghosts yet." Fern grinned, revealing a gold molar. "Spicy. I like it. Y'all got bug spray? You'll need bug spray. Big bottle." They did. Fern revved up the truck and drove them past the last paved road and into the tangled edges of San Malvino National Park, where the green closed in like jaws. Then they switched to foot. Fern led the way with theatrical flair, hacking at vines and delivering enthusiastic commentary like a one-man wildlife special. "Over here we've got a caoba tree, used to carve Spanish ships. And that smell? Wild ginger. Also home to fire ants. Don't sit there. That's a lesson I learned with my left butt cheek." Reg trudged behind, already regretting every life choice that brought him to this moment. "Remind me again why I didn't fake a twisted ankle this morning?" Alex grinned, adjusting her sun hat. "Because then you'd miss the opportunity to dig up another cursed relic." Lucian, surprisingly chipper, marched on with a GPS clipped to his belt and a banana in one pocket. They trekked for nearly an hour, the light dimming under the thick canopy. The jungle pulsed with sound, bird calls, insect chatter, something distant that might have been a monkey. Eventually, Lucian stopped in a sun-dappled clearing. "This is it." "Looks like every other patch of dirt we've passed," Reg muttered. Fern pulled a banana from his pack and took a bite. "But this one's got vibes." The jungle rustled behind them. Polly flapped dramatically from a bush, landing on a low branch and screeching, "Dig or die!" Reg turned slowly. "No!" Gary emerged next, covered in leaves and camouflage face paint that had long since melted into streaks. He held what looked like a plastic canteen and a laminated conspiracy flowchart. "Surprise!" he beamed. Alex blinked. "Were you hiding in the back of the truck?" "Technically under a tarp, with the bananas." Fern offered him one. "Told you I heard breathing in the back." "Please don't tell Mendoza," Gary said. "I think she's still mad about the time I filed a formal UFO sighting under suspicious lights." "There was a street lamp outage," Reg muttered. Still, there was a dig to begin. Gary set up a tiny Bluetooth speaker playing sea shanties. Polly squawked along in off-key harmony. Gary mostly got in the way, attempting to dowsing rod the site with 2 bent coat hangers and a bottle of kombucha. Polly shouted increasingly grim predictions from above. Lucian held the GPS, Alex and Fern dug steadily, and Reg finally struck something solid. "Not rock," he grunted, clearing more dirt. "Something flat." They brushed off the surface, a wooden plank, riddled with wormholes and barely holding together. Beneath it was a shallow cavity. Reg reached down and froze. We've got bones." Alex knelt beside him. "Human?" "Pretty sure." They carefully uncovered more. The curve of a skull, slender ribs, one arm folded across the chest. A faded colonial dress still clung to the bones in tatters. The fabric was delicate, almost lacy, but with something strange stitched into the seams. "Look at the thread," Alex murmured. "That's not decorative. That's a pattern." Lucian leaned in. "It's almost like letters, symbols maybe? Repeating marks, here and here." Reg backed up. "We just found a body, a colonial woman with possibly coded embroidery, and we're standing in the middle of nowhere with a shovel." Gary looked stricken. "You think she was the treasure?" Polly cackled. "She saw too much. Now you will." Reg exhaled. "Well, so much for gold doubloons." Fern peeled another banana. "You ever dug up a colonial corpse in this jungle before?" Reg asked. Fern shrugged. "Not on purpose." Chapter 5. "Absolutely not," the coroner said over speakerphone. "I don't do jungle retrieval." "You're the island coroner," Mendoza snapped. "You signed up for bodies." "On beaches, Mendoza, or beds. Occasionally bushes, but I'm not hiking 2 miles into a fire ant-infested fever dream to scoop up a skeleton." Reg held the phone away from Polly, who was currently perched on a fern branch, shrieking, "Call the vultures!" Mendoza sighed. "Fine," and disconnected the coroner. "Bag it and bring it to me, carefully. And if I find out you stuffed evidence in your backpack next to your lunch again, Lucien, I will report you." "That was one time," Lucien muttered. "Just don't damage the thread work," Alex added. "It might be important." "Wait," Gary said. "So we're just taking her? Like jungle Uber for the undead?" "Unless you want to stay and keep her company until Monday," Lucien said, "because that's when the police drone gets back from maintenance." Gary clutched Polly protectively. "Right, Uber it is." Between Fern's machete, Lucien's overenthusiastic labeling system, and Gary's insistence on doing a spiritual clearance ritual, the process of recovering the skeleton was, predictably, chaos. They'd managed to wrap the remains in a heavy-duty tarp Fern kept in his truck for rainy picnics or crime scenes, and carried it out on a makeshift stretcher built from 2 sturdy branches and a hammock Fern found at an abandoned ranger outpost. Gary refused to touch the tarp directly. "I'm not afraid of ghosts," he explained, rubbing a sprig of sage on his hands, "but she was buried in the jungle, possibly murdered, and almost definitely hexed. That energy clings." Polly added, "Cursed! She's cursed!" Reg took point. Alex and Lucien carried the sides. Fern sang pirate shanties the whole way back. By the time they reached the park entrance, all of them were soaked, scratched, and smelling of jungle sweat and banana. The skeleton, now safely transferred to Mendoza's care and marked female, colonial, possibly important, lay on a gurney in the back of the forensics van under guard. Reg watched Mendoza scribble into her notebook. "I'll get the dress to our textiles guy on the mainland," she muttered. "But he's more of a microfiber and polyester type." "I might have a better idea," Gary said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. He was holding Polly like a baby and looked almost serious. "I know someone," he said. "Edna. She's local. Old-school tailor. She made Polly's vest, the glittery one with the gold trim. Her grandma taught her hand-stitching back when people embroidered secrets into their clothes. Women used it to pass notes or mark property lines or, warn people about cursed husbands." Alex raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you know this?" Gary blinked. "Because I talk to people, Alex. I listen. You should try it sometime." Reg stared at him. "You've had a contact with rare historical knowledge this whole time, and you didn't think to mention it until now?" "I didn't realize we were in the market for embroidered ghosts," Gary said defensively. Polly nodded. "They never ask Gary." Alex pulled out her phone. "What's her number?" "Nope. We go in person," Gary said firmly. "Edna doesn't trust phones. Says they leech creativity." Reg muttered, "So does talking to you." Edna's tailoring shop sat in a mall just off the main square, painted a cheerful seafoam green with a faded sign above the door that read, "Stitch and Time, Custom Garments and Historic Repairs." Inside, it smelled of lavender sachets and mothballs, with bolts of fabric lining the walls and dress forms wearing half-finished carnival costumes. The sewing machine clacked like a typewriter with attitude somewhere in the back. Shannon wrinkled her nose as she stepped inside. "I only tagged along to get my linen pants hemmed. Don't meddle me into your investigation. I need a sleuthing break." Alex grinned. "You picked the wrong day to run errands." Gary bounced in behind her, Polly fluttering dramatically on his shoulder. "Or the right one, depending on your taste for legend." Edna looked up from her work table and smiled when she saw Gary. "Well, if it isn't my favorite lunatic," she said, pushing up her magnifying specs. "What did you spill on Polly this time?" "Nothing! He's pristine!" Gary looked vaguely offended. "We're here on an important historical mission." Alex stepped forward. "We were hoping you could take a look at some embroidery on a colonial-era dress." Edna's brow lifted. Oh, that's not something you hear every day. We think it's code, Alex added. The threadwork doesn't match the style or pattern. It repeats in a way that's deliberate. Reg handed her a high-res photo they'd taken before removing the dress. Edna leaned over it, her fingers trailing the air just above the print. Well, I'll be damned, she whispered. This isn't a decoration. You recognize it? Alex asked. I recognize the method. She looked up. My grandmother taught me this. Island women used to pass messages through embroidery, family lore, love affairs, warnings, especially in colonial times when women weren't allowed to own land or testify in court. You wanted to leave a message behind. This is how you did it. Gary looked triumphant. See? Shannon couldn't pretend she wasn't excited. Coded needlework? I have to learn to do that. This part here, Edna pointed to a stitched motif near the cuff. That's a directional anchor, like a starting point. And this swirl, a symbol for a freshwater spring, Old Island shorthand. Reg leaned over. You think she hid something? No, Edna said softly. I think she guarded something. Alex nodded slowly. So the embroidery could be a map. Give me a few hours with the actual dress and my light box, Edna said. But I can tell you this much already. This wasn't just sentimental. Gary puffed up with pride. Polly screeched, Guard the gold! Shannon sighed. Well, at least I can pick up my pants and pirate lore in one trip. Outside, as they walked across the square, Polly hummed a ghostly little tune that made the hairs rise on Reg's neck. Gary whistled beside her, casually spinning a fidget cube in one hand. I'm just saying, he said. We should probably circle back to my earlier theory about vengeful pirate ghosts, or at least haunted embroidery. You're not helping, Reg muttered. But I could be right. Gary grinned. Alex sighed. At least once in your life you managed to be useful. Gary straightened his shoulders. Thank you, I'll write that down. Might even embroider it. Chapter 6. While Edna worked under her halo lamp and swore in 3 languages about her bent embroidery needle, the rest of the crew found themselves across the square at the San Malvino Historical Museum, an airy colonial building with blue shutters, a creaky front door, and a suggested donation box that was mostly used as a coaster for iced coffee cups. I just needed my pants hemmed, Shannon said as they entered. Next thing I know, I'm following a man with a parrot into a historical institution. You say that like it's your first time, Alex said dryly. We could have just waited at Bongo's, Reg muttered, pushing the museum door open. Alex replied, and risk Gary telling his version of events to every table? Pass. Gary, who had insisted on coming along, was already halfway into the gift shop, browsing postcards with intense focus. Polly, the parrot, freshly spritzed with lavender mist by Edna, perched regally on his shoulder and muttered, "Smells like old socks." Inside, the museum was cool and dim, with quiet instrumental music playing over a scratchy speaker. Display cases lined the walls, rusted anchors, colonial hairbrushes, ceramic jugs labeled unverified pirate piss pots, and a few cracked cutlasses dulled to safety. A faded poster at the entrance read, San Malvino through the centuries, from sugar to shipwrecks. Is anything in this place even real? Reg said, eyeing a mannequin in 18th century breeches that had definitely seen better tailoring. But Alex wandered into the side gallery and stopped abruptly. There, adorned in a gold leaf frame and lit from above, was a painting, oil on canvas, darkened with age. A young woman stood at the edge of a cliff, her back to a stormy sea. Her expression was distant, wistful, but the dress she wore was unmistakable. "Oh my God," Alex said. "Reg, look." He stepped beside her, brow furrowed. "That's the same dress." Exactly. The stitching, the neckline, even that odd puff at the sleeves. It's her. Gary stopped marching ahead and held Polly aloft like she was a living relic. "Well? Hello, oh, skeleton lady," he said with a flair. "We seek ancestral truths." Polly screeched, "Show me the loot, Sugar Lips!" You know, there's a pirate story about this place. Not sure if it's real, but someone on Reddit once said San Malvino was cursed by Blackbeard himself. Or maybe it was Captain Kidd. No, wait, it was definitely Anne Bonny, Gary said, still looking at the painting. Wrong, extremely wrong. Alex shook her head. Gary turned and pointed dramatically at a faded oil painting. Okay, but that's her! The Pirate Queen! The small plaque under the painting read, Isabella Duarte, circa 1720, beloved of Bartholomew Black Bart Roberts. She waited. He never came. Gary squinted. Black Bart? That doesn't sound very romantic. Shannon crossed her arms. Better than Crazy Gary. A soft voice cut through their chatter. You found one of our oldest pieces. The museum curator had appeared at their side, a small man with an elegant mustache, tortoiseshell glasses, and the bearing of someone who ironed his socks. His name tag read, Otto Delmar, curator. We're sorry, Alex said. We just recognized the dress. We think we may have found it. Otto blinked. You mean the original? Reg nodded. Not in great condition, but yeah, on a skeleton, buried in the jungle. Otto's lips parted. Remarkable. Gary leaned in. So, is it true? Was she, like, Black Bart's mistress? Pirate bride? Siren of the Seven Seas? The curator smiled gently. May I tell you the version we consider closest to truth? Please, Alex said. Otto gestured toward a bench nearby. They all sat, Polly hopping onto the backrest and immediately pooping on the pirate exhibit sign. Otto began. Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart, sailed these waters in the early 1700s. He was clever, ruthless, and famously well-dressed. But unlike many pirates of his era, he was also disciplined. No gambling or drunkenness allowed aboard his ship. They say he fell in love only once during a brief stop at San Malvino. He nodded toward the painting. Isabella Duarte was the daughter of a prominent Portuguese family. They owned land, employed dozens of workers, and had ambitions far beyond this island. Isabella was independent, spirited, and deeply intelligent. She met Roberts by accident, or fate, if you believe the story. For weeks they met in secret. Some say he buried a treasure on this island for his beloved in case he didn't return. Gary gasped audibly. Otto went on. But her parents had already arranged a marriage. They considered pirates beneath them, no matter how gallant. Isabella was locked away and married to a wealthy merchant. She never saw Roberts again. His ship, the Royal Fortune, sank off the coast of Africa less than a year later. Reg exhaled slowly. And she? Otto's eyes turned somber. She lived only a little while longer. Legend says she walked the cliffs every day. Some say she buried the map to the treasure Black Bart gave her to keep others from ever finding it. Some say she carried his child. Others believe she never had children and went crazy of heartbreak. Gary wiped his eyes with his t-shirt. That's tragic. Like, legit tragic. Polly warbled, Love is death. Alex asked, Is there any record of her descendants? Otto shook his head. No legitimate ones, no. It's a very common name on the island, and a few old families here still claim blood ties to Isabella, but there is no proof. Anyone from the cliffs side? Reg asked. That land was once part of the Duarte estate, Otto said. Passed hands many times. Some pieces were squatted on, others sold. There was even a small hut built there sometime in the 70s, I believe. Alex and Reg locked eyes. Gary blinked. Cragg's hut? Shannon tilted her head. So maybe he didn't just stumble onto that map. Maybe it was meant to be found. Polly screeched, It's a curse, not a coincidence. Otto smiled faintly. You seem to have stepped into a very old story. Chapter 7. Mendoza wasn't a sentimental woman by nature, but something about rummaging through a dead man's life with latex gloves and a Ziploc bag full of evidence tabs always made her uneasy. Cragg's hut had been cleared of the immediate chaos. No more blood, no more body, just the stale, low-ceilinged stillness of a life lived in near total solitude. Pickle juice smell still hurts my eyes, Lucian muttered, flipping open a cracked drawer. "Don't you dare cry on the evidence and make me regret dragging you here," Mendoza said. "Too late," he replied, already kneeling beside a low trunk wedged under the bed. Crag didn't own much, but what he did keep was odd. 2 carved walking sticks, one with a compass embedded in the handle, a tin of hard candies that had fossilized into a colorful monolith, dozens of dog-eared books on nautical history, colonial maps, herbal medicine, and one spiral notebook simply labeled, "The Truth They Won't Print." Lucian held that one up. "Do I even want to know?" "Later," Mendoza said. "Let's start with personal records. Anything with names." It wasn't easy. Crag hadn't had a driver's license, credit card, or even a functioning bank account as far as they could tell. The only ID on file was a 50-year-old port registry card from when he'd docked here with a cargo ship under a Liberian flag. He must have gone off-grid not long after. Lucian pulled out a cigar box and opened it slowly. Inside, folded letters, brittle and yellowed, old photos, and one delicate silk scarf, faded but hand-stitched in crimson thread with tiny roses along the hem. Mendoza reached for the photos first. Bingo! There she was. A younger woman, maybe mid-20s, with strong cheekbones, dark wavy hair, and a gaze that seemed half laugh, half challenge. In the oldest photos, she wore sundresses and stood beside Crag on a sailboat. In others, she leaned into him at a picnic table, holding a beer and a cigarette. But one photo stopped them both cold. It was black and white, taken indoors, mid-century style. A jazz trio played in the background. The decor was Art Deco, with sconces shaped like seashells and a mirrored bar gleaming behind the couple seated at a small table near the stage. Crag, clean-shaven and wearing a loose linen shirt, had his arm around the woman, who wore a slim-cut black dress and a necklace with a shell pendant. Scrawled on the back in faded pen, "Jazz Night El Corazon Azul 78. Lucien frowned. El Corazon Azul? That name rings a bell. Mendoza stared at the image. "Hold on." She pulled out her phone and tapped into the Island Records archive. A few quick queries later, she had it. El Corazon Azul was a jazz bar back in the 70s, shut down after a fire in 82. Guess what stands there now? Lucian blinked. "I have no clue." Mendoza grinned grimly. "Bongos, and here I thought Crag was just a weirdo who liked cheap rum." She flipped over one of the letters and scanned it. The handwriting was neat, looping, emotional. "My wild man, by the time you find this, I'll be long gone. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I didn't have the strength to say goodbye face to face. If I had seen your eyes, I would have stayed. And I can't. Not anymore. You were the first man who ever made me feel free. The wind in your sails, the sea in your laugh. You were chaos and wonder and stubborn dreams. I loved you for that. I still love you for that. But I need more. I need a roof that doesn't leak in the rainy season. A room with a real floor. I want to eat dinner at a table and know where I'll be in 5 years. I want children, our children, but not if they're going to grow up in a hut with no electricity and a father who doesn't care for their future. I know you'll say I'm giving up, but I'm not. I'm just choosing another path. I'm choosing to plant roots, to try for a future that looks different from yours. I left you the deed. The land is yours now. I know how much it meant to me, but I think to you it means more. You can stay there for the rest of your days, talk to the birds, fish at dawn, write your strange little theories in the margins of old books. That life suits you. It just doesn't suit me. Please don't come after me. I'm leaving the island tonight. I won't tell you where. That would only make it harder. I hope one day, far from now, when the ache has dulled, you'll find someone who wants to live beside the ocean with a man who never wanted anything but his freedom. Maybe she'll love your quiet. Maybe she'll love the way you see things no one else does. Just don't waste your years waiting for someone who's already gone. I'll miss the smell of salt on your skin. I'll miss your stories, your songs, the way you held me like I was the last warm thing in the world. And I'll remember how you looked at me that first night at El Corazon, like you already knew we wouldn't last, but you were going to love me anyway. I'll carry that with me always. Goodbye, William. Love, Marisol Duarte. The signature was what caught her eye. Marisol Duarte. She looked at the next letter. It was more recent, probably written a few years before Crag died. My wild man. You always said that wealth didn't matter, that the island was enough. Maybe that was true, or maybe you just didn't want to do more. I loved you. I still love you. But I love the life I built for myself, too. I once told our story to someone who still believed in wonder. Maybe one day someone like that will come looking, with clearer eyes than ours. I am very ill, William. This will be my last letter. I lived a good life, and I hope you did too. Love, Marisol Duarte. Mendoza tapped the page thoughtfully. I think she knew about the map, but she never told him. Lucian nodded. Maybe she thought he wouldn't care. They packed up the letters and photos, careful not to disturb the delicate scarf. As Mendoza sealed the bag, she glanced once more at the photo of the jazz club. Kind of poetic, she said. He never left the place they met. Lucian exhaled. You think if she told him their life would be different? I think he wouldn't care, Mendoza said quietly. I think she was his treasure. Chapter 8. The conference room at the San Malvino police station had undergone a facelift since their last big case. Mendoza got tired of the sad decor and finally got rid of the jellyfish poster for good. Now the walls were a soft sea glass green, and Shannon's art students had donated still-life photos of island flora and historic rooftops, framed in mismatched wooden frames. The effect was surprisingly pleasant. Reg sat hunched at the far end of the long table like a man recovering from too many cultural activities in one day. He tapped his sunglasses against his coffee cup and looked terribly bored. Alex was beside him, flipping through her notes with the precision of someone who had absolutely no faith in Reg remembering anything important. Shannon leaned against the wall near the whiteboard, her newly hemmed pants tucked into her boots, sipping from a soda that had gone flat 10 minutes ago. She looked more like an amused onlooker than someone who helped spruce up the room. Lucian entered with a stack of files and 2 cups of vending machine coffee. Mendoza followed, carrying nothing but her irritation. "Where's Gary?" she asked, nodding at the empty chair beside the whiteboard. "Send him home," Reg said without looking up. "Polly, too." "He was getting underfoot," Alex added with the tone of someone trying to justify evicting a family dog. "Getting?" Mendoza arched a brow. "He exists underfoot. That bird nearly chewed through my mic cord last time." Shannon lifted her soda. "Quote of the week still goes to you. If I hear one more squawk about parrot prophecy, I'm going to lose my badge for animal torture." Mendoza grunted. "Still stands." She dropped into her chair and gestured vaguely. "Let's get this over with. You first." Reg slid a folder across the table. Inside were high-resolution images of the embroidery from the colonial dress, annotated in Edna's loopy, confident script. "She finished deciphering it," Alex said. "Turns out it's basically a set of directions, a stitched map in code." Lucian flipped through the photos. "And not just any code, Old Island shorthand." "Edna said her grandmother taught her the basics when she was a kid," Shannon added. "It's how women used to pass information secretly, since they didn't have many rights." Mendoza nodded slowly. "The matriarchal underground. Clever." Reg pointed to the final page. "That swirl? It's not just decoration. It marks a freshwater spring. Combine that with the directional stitches and the pattern of shell symbols, and you've basically got a hand-sewn treasure map." Mendoza arched a brow. "So let me get this straight. A woman dies with a hand-sewn secret on her dress, and someone buried her and drew a map to her grave." "Looks that way," said Alex. "We think the dress belonged to Isabella Duarte." Lucian perked up. "Same last name as Marisol Duarte?" "I guess so. Who's Marisol?" Alex asked. Mendoza opened another file and slid it toward her. Craig's long-lost lover. We found letters from her in his hut, plus a stack of old photos, including one taken at a jazz club that used to be where Bongo's is now. Reg leaned forward. So Marisol might be Isabella's great-great-whatever granddaughter. They even look alike. Shannon nodded. That painting at the museum, the dress, the name, the legend, the treasure, it wasn't just a story. The room went still. Even the fan quieted its hum, as if listening. Mendoza leaned back. Very charming. Still doesn't tell me who stabbed in the back William Craig. Technically between the shoulder blades, Lucian muttered. Mendoza gave him a look sharp enough to cut rope. Reg exhaled. What if it is connected? Someone knew about the first map. Gary swears only he and Craig saw it, but someone else clearly wanted it bad enough to kill. Gary also believes the pyramids were built by aliens, Mendoza reminded. But, fine, say someone wanted the map. What next? Alex tapped her notes. If the embroidery leads to a second site, and that's where the treasure is, then someone with a family tie, like a descendant, could have known about it and gone after it. Or, Lucian added, they passed the legend down without knowing it was true until recently. Mendoza leaned in. Marisol said in her last letter that she shared the story with someone who still believed in wonder. Lucian tapped a pen against the file. Probably someone from Duarte family? Then we're not the only ones looking, Mendoza finished grimly. A heavy silence followed. Everyone stared at the embroidery photos like they might rearrange themselves into a suspect list. Then Reg's phone buzzed on the table. Gary Mobile. He sighed and picked it up. Gary, we told you to... A blood-curdling shriek tore through the speaker. Help! Polly's voice screamed. Help! Help! Bad man! Then static. Then silence. Reg stared at the phone like it had just turned into a cobra. Alex leaned in. Was that... Yes, Reg said, standing so fast his chair squeaked. That was Polly. Mendoza shot to her feet. Lucian, trace it. I'm on it, Lucian said, already typing. Pinging last signal now. Shannon grabbed her bag. Let's hope it's Gary pulling pranks 'cause he's bored. I think Polly doesn't scream like that unless something is very wrong, Alex said. He's practically our feathery crime barometer. Or someone turned on a blender, Shannon muttered, but she was already moving. Mendoza's eyes had darkened to something sharp. If someone's after Gary, it means they think he knows more than he does. Which is dangerous, Reg said. He's got enthusiasm, but no filter. Signal's dead, Lucian reported. Last ping was near the beach road, close to Bongo's. Then nothing, no movement, like the phone was turned off or destroyed. We told him to go home, Alex muttered, frustrated, and not to talk to strangers. Reg was already at the door. I'm getting Bombay. We'll meet you there. Go, Mendoza said. Shannon, you're with them. As the door slammed behind them, the sea-glass green walls seemed to fade a little, like the station knew things were about to get ugly. And somewhere out there, a parrot had just sounded the alarm. Chapter 9. The beach near Bongo's was quiet, save for the distant sound of waves and the increasingly frantic shrieks of a parrot. Help! Bad man! Help! Gary! Mendoza parked at an angle, tires skidding slightly in the sand. Lucian jumped out before the engine even stopped, scanning the palm trees. The low light of dusk cast long shadows, turning everything golden and slightly unreal. There, he pointed. At the top of a wind-twisted palm, Polly flapped his wings with barely contained hysteria. A few feathers floated down as he screamed, Bad man! Help! Find Gary! Feathers don't lie. Mendoza tilted her head. He looks like he's been in a bar fight. Looks like he started it, Lucian muttered, shielding his eyes from the setting sun. Just then, headlights cut across the sand behind them. Reggie's jeep rolled up fast, kicking dust as it stopped. Alex climbed out with urgency in her step. Reg was already letting Bombay out of the back. Shannon followed, pulling her jacket tighter as the breeze picked up. Reg glanced up at the shrieking parrot. Well, at least he's not whispering cryptic nonsense this time. Polly spotted them and let out another shriek. "Help! Gary! Sand! Bad man! Help!" "Polly!" Alex called. "It's okay, we're here." Polly fluffed his feathers, then flapped to a lower branch, screeching, "CAP! CAP! CAP!" Reg frowned. "Cap?" He crouched in the sand and spotted something half-buried near the dune. With one hand, he pulled it out. Gary's sun-faded baseball cap, sweat-stained, with the unmistakable, "The truth is out there," on the front. "Bombay," he said softly, kneeling beside the dog. He held the cap close to the shepherd's nose. "Find him. Find Gary." Bombay gave a short, focused bark, then turned and began sniffing in quick zigzags across the beach. Everyone followed. Polly screamed again. "Bad cousin took Gary!" Lucian blinked. "Did he say cousin?" "Sounds like it," Shannon said, jogging to keep up. "Do parrots understand family trees?" "They do if Gary talks his ears off every night," Reg muttered. Bombay's trail led them past a patch of sea grape bushes and into the dune grass near the road. He paused, barked, then surged forward, until he came to a halt near a thick clump of brush. He growled low. "Someone's there," Alex said, eyes narrowing. "Show me your hands," Mendoza barked, already drawing her weapon. A figure slowly emerged, hands raised, early 20s, dark hair, panicked expression. He held Gary's backpack. "Don't shoot!" he cried. "Please, I didn't hurt him." Mendoza moved in fast, cuffing him and reading his rights with the ease of muscle memory. "Name?" "Mateo Duarte. I have ID in my bag." Mendoza gave Reg a sharp look. "Duarte?" "Another one," he muttered. "Island's practically swimming in them." Mateo kept talking, stumbling over his words. "I came here looking for my grandmother's first love, but I didn't mean for any of this. I just wanted to find the man my grandmother told me about. Marisol. Her name was Marisol Duarte. She used to live here." "We know who she was," Mendoza cut in. "Keep talking." "She told me everything before she died," Mateo said. "About the land, the map, the man she loved who never left. I wanted to come here, see it all for myself." "So you tracked down a relative," Lucien guessed. "Victor," Mateo confirmed. "He's lived here all his life. I thought he would show me around." Reg stepped closer, Bombay tense at his side. "Where's Gary?" Mateo held out his cuffed hands like a peace offering. "I tried to stop it, I swear." Mendoza's voice was full of ice. "Stop what?" Mateo swallowed. "Victor, my cousin. He's been following him all day long. Told me that Gary is friends with the cops, so he knows what you found in the jungle. I followed him from Bongo's to warn him, to tell him not to get involved, but Victor grabbed him before I could do anything." Mateo's voice cracked. "I swear I didn't know he was going to. He just panicked." "Where?" Mendoza asked sharply, stepping closer. "He's got this old repair shop near the old lighthouse," Mateo said. "He fixes motors, boards, random junk, but there's a back road that runs behind it, leads to the cliffs. He keeps his Jeep stashed there. Gray, no plates." "Why would he take Gary there?" Alex asked, her voice tight. I think he wants to find the treasure," Mateo said. "He heard Gary talking at Bongo's about the embroidery and the grave. He said Gary probably knew where it was." "So he kidnapped him to get the location?" Reg said, voice like gravel. "I specifically told Gary to go straight home, but no, the idiot had to go and brag at Bongo's." Mateo looked at the ground. "I tried to warn him too. I really did." Polly let out another shriek from the tree. "Digging! Bad cousin! Hurry up!" Lucian gave Mendoza a meaningful glance. "Sounds like Victor's not wasting time." Mendoza nodded. "All right, let's go find them." Reg stepped forward. "You want us to split up?" "No, I want us to think like grown-ups," Mendoza snapped. "Reg, you and Bombay take the back trail. He might have left tire tracks near that hidden road. If you see the Jeep, don't go full cowboy." Reg looked almost disappointed. "Define full cowboy." "Don't get shot," Alex said. Mendoza turned to Shannon. "You up for a nighttime walk?" Shannon rolled her eyes. "I wore boots, didn't I?" "Lucian, stay with Mateo," Mendoza added. Call for backup if anything goes sideways, quietly. I don't want mainland police showing up. Got it, Lucian said, dragging Mateo to the car. Mendoza turned back to the rest. If Victor thinks Gary knows the final location, he's going to want him to talk. Or dig. Either way, we need to find them before that happens. Polly says dig, Shannon muttered. We should probably believe the bird. Reg let out a long breath and turned to Bombay. You ready, boy? The canine gave a soft bark in return. Polly screeched from the tree again, this time louder. Bad cousin, dumb plan, feathers don't lie. They all looked up. Shannon sighed. Why do I feel like that parrot's gonna end up in court? Mendoza already had her keys in hand. Because unfortunately, he's the most reliable witness. Chapter 10. The inside of Victor's repair shop smelled like sweat, motor oil, and something that might have once been a sandwich. The overhead light flickered sporadically, like it was too exhausted to commit. Gary sat in a metal chair with fraying duct tape around the arms, hands bound, ankles looped with an extension cord. Victor paced in front of him, breathing hard. He wore oil-stained jeans and a threadbare t-shirt that read, San Malvino Auto and Appliances. If it sparks, we fix it. His fingers twitched with each pass. I know you know something, Victor snapped. You and your cop friends, you were out there. Digging up things? Talking to that old tailor woman? What did you find? Gary blinked innocently. A deeper understanding of mortality. Also, possibly a hexed colonial seamstress. The jury's still out? Victor slammed a hand down on the workbench. Tools clattered. Don't screw with me, man. What was on that dress? Gary wriggled slightly. Technically, I didn't touch the dress. I believe in respecting the dead. And ancient blend fibers. Static is a silent killer, you know. Victor strode forward, grabbing Gary's chair and yanking it an inch closer. Talk, or I swear I'll let your parrot tweet your obituary. Gary exhaled dramatically. Okay, fine. You want the truth? You're not gonna like it. Victor crossed his arms. Try me. Gary leaned in as far as the cords would let him. It wasn't just a dress. It was a transmission. Victor blinked. A what? Encoded textile signal. A centuries-old message from a lost matriarchal order that predates colonial rule. They called themselves the Needles of Justice. Secret society. Ran everything from the spice trade to the underground mango markets. That embroidery? Coordinates, yes, but also a warning, a curse. Victor looked like he was trying to decide between rage and confusion. A curse? Gary nodded solemnly. Anyone who tries to claim the treasure for selfish reasons is doomed to misplace their keys for the rest of their life, and possibly be turned into a goat. Victor slammed a wrench down onto the table beside Gary's head. It rang like a bell. Gary flinched only slightly. You think this is funny? Victor growled. I need that treasure. It belongs to my family. Well, there's your first mistake. Pirates don't have families. Everyone knows that. Victor loomed over him. I heard you at Bongo's, talking about stitching and maps. Tell me what it said. Okay, Gary said quickly. You want to know the truth? The real truth? Victor glared. Yes. Gary lowered his voice. It said, Beware the man who digs too deep, for he shall unearth himself. A long beat. Victor stared at him. What does that even mean? I don't know, but it sounds like something a pirate ghost would say, right? Victor let out a frustrated noise that could have curdled milk. He turned away, paced to the far end of the shop, then spun back, eyes wild. You think I'm playing games? He shouted. Gary shrugged. What games? Victor grabbed a spade from the wall. You're going to help me find that final spot, the one your girlfriend figured out with the tailor. Where's the next X? Gary furrowed his brow. Okay, first of all, she's not my girlfriend. She's with Lucian now, though I have considered embroidering our names together on a pillow. Second of all, have you considered that the X isn't a place? That it's a metaphor? For, like, inner fulfillment? Victor groaned, pulled at his hair, and walked to the back of the shop. I swear, if I don't get something useful out of you in the next 10 minutes... Gary perked up. Oh, I do have something useful. I wrote a theory last night that the real treasure is not gold, but a transdimensional key to a 5th century vault under the island, guarded by parrot spirits. Want to hear it? Victor spun, hurling a screwdriver at the wall. It stuck in the plywood with a thunk. Gary whistled. Well, now you're just being rude. From somewhere outside, there was a soft rustle. Gary went very still. Polly's faint voice echoed through the shop window. Too many tools. Bad man, help! Victor froze. Was that your bird? Gary smiled. Might be. He's got a surprisingly accurate moral compass for someone who eats his own feathers. Victor grabbed the shovel and stalked toward the back exit. Stay here. Gary called after him. Kinda tied up at the moment, thanks. He leaned back as much as the cords allowed and whispered toward the window. Polly? Buddy? Operation Distract the Psycho is a go. From outside came the unmistakable sound of a parrot screaming, Lawyer! Lawyer! I'm innocent! Gary sighed with admiration. That's my bird! A second voice, sharp, low, and unmistakably human, cut through the jungle-thick air. Bombay! Go! Gary's eyes widened. Oh, thank Polynesian prophecy! They came. The door behind him burst open with the force of a thunderclap. A blur of black fur tore into the room. Bombay, ears flat, eyes blazing, moving with the precision of a missile. Victor's shout rang out half a second later from somewhere outside, followed by the crunch of feet on gravel and the clang of a shovel hitting something metal. Gary! Reggie's voice came from behind. Gary wriggled around just in time to see Reg step through the broken doorway like a retired action hero. Hey, buddy, Reg said. We brought backup. About time, Gary huffed. I've been suffering psychological torture and tool-related threats. Polly flapped in through the broken window like a war hawk in drag. Arrest the loser! Reg ignored the parrot, already kneeling beside Gary. You all right? Gary nodded, breathless. Mostly, might have bruises, and I think he stole my dignity. Reg glanced at the tangled cords. Pretty sure that went missing a while back. Fair point. Reg started cutting through the cords with his pocket knife. Bombay's got Victor distracted. For now. Outside, Victor shouted, Get off me, you freakin' mutt! Followed by what sounded like a toolbox falling over. Polly perched on a shelf and cackled. SICM, Black Lightning. Gary looked up at Reg. You trained your dog for this exact scenario? No, but he likes biting bad guys. Just then, Victor stumbled into view through the doorway, his shirt half torn, Bombay still snapping at his heels. Blood ran from a shallow cut on his forearm where he'd tripped over a rake. He raised the shovel again, then froze. Mendoza stood behind him, gun drawn, eyes cold enough to stop global warming. Drop it. Victor did. Fast. Bombay backed off with a satisfied growl and parked himself between Reg and Victor, tongue lolling. Mendoza stepped forward, cuffing Victor with practiced efficiency. Victor Duarte, you're under arrest for kidnapping and assault. Victor flinched as the cuffs snapped into place. I didn't mean to hurt him. I just wanted the treasure. It was ours, my family's. I am a real Duarte. Mendoza didn't blink. And Gary was what? A tour guide? He knew something, Victor barked. Reg cut the final tie from Gary's wrist, and he slumped forward with a dramatic gasp. Thank you. My circulation owes you a fruit basket. Reg stood, brushing dust off his shorts. Remind me again why you didn't just go home like I told you? Gary lifted his head sheepishly. Technically, I did go home. Then I went to Bongo's, for morale. Reg rubbed his temple. One of these days, your idea of morale is going to get us all killed. Polly screeched. No body, no case. Mendoza glanced at the parrot. I'm officially filing him as a hostile witness. Victor sat slumped on the ground, glaring at nothing. I was so close to the treasure, so close. Mendoza shook her head. If there is really a treasure, it doesn't belong to you. Victor opened his mouth to argue, but Bombay growled softly, and he closed it again. Reg turned to Gary. You good to stand? Gary wobbled upright. My legs are jelly. Polly flapped down onto his shoulder. Injured but fabulous. Reg sighed. We're going home before someone else gets more fabulous injuries. Gary limped out of the shop, leaning heavily on Reg. I'm just saying, I was doing fine until Victor broke out the shovel. That's when things took a turn. Reg rolled his eyes. That's always when things take a turn. Chapter 11. Mateo Duarte sat hunched in the uncomfortable metal chair of the interrogation room, cuffed to the table, eyes flicking toward the door every time someone walked past. If anything, he didn't look like a criminal. He looked like a man caught in the net of his own good intentions. Mendoza set a recorder on the table and sat across from him. Lucian leaned against the far wall and tapped quietly at a tablet. I want to be clear, Mateo said, voice tight. I never hurt anyone. I didn't know what Victor was going to do. We know, Mendoza said. That's why we're starting with you. Mateo swallowed. He's not a bad person. Not really, he got caught up. Tell us from the beginning, Reg said. Your beginning. Why you came here. Mateo nodded, hands tightening. My grandmother was Marisol Duarte, he said. She died a few years ago. At the end, when she was really sick, she started talking about a man named Crag, said he lived on the island, said he was stubborn and sweet and smelled like the sea, and that she loved him more than anyone. Lucian raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. She said they both loved jazz, had their favorite place, El Corazon Azul, that he wanted a quiet and simple life, just fishing and sunsets. But she wanted more, a house, a future, a good life. When she realized that he would never change, she left him and the island. And, Mendoza prompted, what she never told Crag was the other story, the one that only the women in our family knew. He hesitated, then leaned forward. The story of Isabella Duarte and the pirate. Lucien looked up from the tablet but kept quiet. Mateo continued. My grandma said their love story was real, and Black Bart really left Isabella a treasure. But when her father made her marry a merchant, she decided that no man in the family would ever lay hands on the treasure Black Bart left for her, so she stitched the directions into her mourning dress and never took it off. People thought she went crazy from grief, but that was her way to protect what was left of her love. So only the women knew what the embroidery meant, Lucian said softly. Yes, and when in the 1920s the old Duarte cemetery was getting demolished, the women moved her coffin to the jungle and buried directions to her body in what later became Marisol's land. Mendoza's expression didn't change. Why none of Duarte women ever looked for the treasure? Black Bart's gold doubloons could have changed their lives. They believed that the treasure was cursed, and whoever uncovered it would be unlucky in love, just like Isabella. So, if you believe everything your grandmother said, why come after it? I didn't come to dig up some treasure. I wanted to find Crag, Mateo said, voice tight. To tell him that she always loved him, to see what kind of a person he is. What about Victor? Mendoza asked. I didn't know anyone on the island, Mateo said. Victor was family, kind of. Cousin, twice removed. I messaged him, said I was coming to San Malvino, asked if he'd show me around. I just wanted someone local to help. He shook his head. I told him about Marisol and Crag, about the pirate story. I didn't know he'd get obsessed. He started asking questions, poking around. Then one night he heard something at Bongo's. Crag and Gary, Reg said. Mateo nodded. He said they were talking about a map, that Crag had found it on the old Duarte land by the cliffs. I didn't believe him at first. But then Victor started going through old things, spending every night trying to match landmarks to whatever he thought the treasure might be. And you? Mendoza asked. I kept thinking that I should leave, Mateo said. But part of me wanted to see it too. What if the treasure was real? It seemed kind of exciting. Mendoza exchanged a glance with Lucian. Victor never told you what he did, Lucien said. No, Mateo whispered. Not at first. He just said Crag was out of the way, that we could beat the others to it if we moved fast. But then he started acting different. Didn't go to work? Stopped taking me anywhere? Mendoza leaned in. When did you find out Crag was dead? After the skeleton was found, Mateo said. That's when Victor started panicking. He told me that cops were after our treasure, that you were ahead, that he has Crag's map. That's when he came clean about killing him. And you stayed quiet. I didn't know what to do, Mateo admitted. I felt sick, but I figured I was just another tourist. Who would believe me? Mendoza's voice cut through the silence. Crag didn't even know the map was connected to Marisol. He found it while planting tomatoes and decided it would be a good adventure for him and Gary. Mateo looked up, stricken. I know. Mendoza folded her hands. We believe you, but I need it on record. You never went to Crag's hut? No, I swear. And the map? Victor has it. Or had it. He never let me see it properly. Said I'd just mess it up and ruin everything, like always. Lucian tapped his tablet once. Fern says someone was snooping around the jungle but never got far. Mendoza leaned back in her chair. That's all for now, Mateo. You'll stay in holding until we decide if we charge you as an accessory to murder or not. Mateo nodded and looked at the ground. As he stood and the officer led him out, Lucian muttered, He's just a kid. He's an adult who stayed quiet knowing his cousin killed a man, Mendoza said. But no, he's not the villain here. She tapped the table once, firmly. Bring in Victor. Let me guess. Mateo's playing the innocent? Victor sat down and rolled his neck. Mendoza didn't blink. He told us everything. Victor scoffed. I bet he did. She started the recorder. You're under arrest for abduction for now, Mendoza said, but we're past the point of guessing, so I'm going to ask you once. Did you kill William Crag? A long pause. Then Victor let out a sharp breath and muttered, He wasn't supposed to die. Lucian's stylus stilled. He was an old man, Victor said. Lived his whole life on Duarte land rent-free, and now he wanted our treasure. Just so you know, Marisol left him the land. He had all the papers, Lucian said, his voice low. Victor nodded, not looking up. Yeah, I know, I checked the property records. No one thought of leaving a piece of land to me. He scoffed. At Bongo's Crag was bragging about some find, laughing with that parrot guy. Said he'd found a real adventure. Said no one else knew about it. I knew it had to be the pirate treasure. Didn't even take seriously what he had. So you followed him, Mendoza said. He left early. I went after him. Figured I'll convince him to give me the map. Did you? She asked. Victor exhaled through his nose. I tried. He laughed in my face. Said the treasure hunt wasn't for men like me. Said I was just chasing ghosts. And then? Lucian asked. I pushed him, Victor said. He shoved back. We both grabbed for something. He had a knife on the table. I don't even know how it happened. You stabbed him in the back, Mendoza said, left him bleeding on the floor of his own hut. Victor looked up, eyes rimmed red. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. But it did, Lucian said. And instead of turning yourself in, you took the map. Victor's fists clenched, because I thought if I found it, I would finally be rich. A real Duarte like in the old days, not just an afterthought. Mendoza's voice didn't change. So you turned a love story into a murder. Victor's mouth twisted. Who cares about love? Mendoza closed the notebook. Victor Duarte, you're being charged with second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. You'll be transferred off-island within 48 hours to wait for your trial. Victor leaned back, jaw working. You're all fools if you think that treasure's just some story. Mendoza stood. We don't. She turned to the door. Take him away. Chapter 12. The group gathered in the small back room of the police station, Mendoza's version of a war room. A topographical map of San Malvino was spread across the table, already peppered with notes from Lucian and thumbtacks from Reg. Gary had a bag of trail mix. I said 1 almond, just 1, Gary hissed as the parrot who dug in the bag. Polly ignored him. Needs protein. Focus, Mendoza said, shooting the bird a flat look before turning to Alex. Let's hear it. Alex gave a crisp nod and cleared her throat. These are the full embroidered lines, decoded from the dress, she said. It's written like a riddle, but I think we can interpret it. She read aloud. Where stone remembers what water forgot, beneath the roots where lovers fought, the spring house cracked where hearts once bled, there sleeps the gold the pirate fled. A silence settled over the room. Reg let out a slow whistle. Well, that's poetic. Shannon leaned forward. What's a spring house? Lucian answered, already scrolling through a scanned map overlay. Old stone structures used to store water and preserve food, usually built near fresh springs. There used to be one on Duarte land, back when it was farmland. Gary raised a hand. Wait, where lovers fought. Are we talking physical fight, or heartbreak fight, or maybe metaphorical knife fight? Bombay groaned under the table. Alex gave him a look. You're lucky we even brought you. Gary held up a finger. I'm here for historical depth and emotional texture. Polly flapped once and landed on the back of Reggie's chair. Spring house! Go, go, go! Mendoza turned to Lucian. What do we have on that spring house? Lucian tapped the screen. Here. Edge of the old Duarte parcel, about half a mile in from the cliffs. It's technically still there. Collapsed in on itself, overgrown, but satellite data shows a square footprint. Coordinates? Reg asked. Lucian rattled them off. Reg jotted them down on a post-it and tucked it into his cargo shorts like a treasure hunter from a low-budget adventure flick. Gary leaned in, pointing. And Stone remembers what water forgot? That's probably a carved marking, like a heart or initials. That's classic pirate stuff. Cursed rock, bad love, Polly said ominously. Shannon looked at Alex. Was that the last line? Alex nodded. That was everything. Edna said the rest of embroidery was just decoration, but it's consistent with someone trying to bury something deeply personal, something that wasn't meant to be disturbed. Alex crossed her arms. Then why give clues at all? To make sure someone worthy could find it, Lucian said. Someday? A beat passed. Then Mendoza stood. All right, here's what we're going to do. Reg, Lucian, Alex, Gary, you're going to follow this out. Shannon and I will stay here to prep the museum and the ministry in case this thing turns out to be legitimate. Reg looked at Gary. You're good for a hike? Gary stood with shaky enthusiasm. I've got snacks, boots, and a vague sense of destiny. Let's go. Polly cackled. Adventure, doubloons or death. The jungle swallowed sound in the way only real wilderness could. Even with sunlight filtering through the palm fronds and Bombay trotting ahead like he knew the way, the air felt thick, almost reverent. I think I just inhaled a bug, Gary muttered, swatting near his face. Hope it wasn't symbolic. Reg led the group along a faint trail, machete in one hand, GPS marker in the other. Lucian followed, occasionally checking the topographical overlay on his phone. Alex took up the rear, watching their surroundings. Polly flapped between shoulders, alternately shouting encouragement and doom. Deeper, diggier, doubloons ahead! The old Duarte parcels sloped gently downward toward the cliffs, but the vegetation had been left to rot for decades. Bombay nosed through a patch of ferns, tail up, until he stopped and gave a low bark. Reg pushed forward and parted the brush. Before them stood what remained of the spring house, or rather, what remained of its ghost. The foundation stones were still visible in a square outline, half sunk into the moss. Ivy twisted up one partial wall, and a cracked stone ledge jutted out like a broken jaw. The air smelled faintly of damp stone and rusted history. Lucian moved toward it slowly. This is it. Alex pointed. Look! Near the crumbled corner, half covered by leaves, was a stone slab with a heart etched deep into the surface. Inside it, I plus B. I for Isabella, Lucian whispered. B for Bart. Or idiots bickering, Gary offered, stepping closer. But sure, let's go with the romantic version. Polly flapped onto the stone and tapped it with one claw. Love, blood, danger, baby. Reg ignored the commentary and crouched by the base of the crumbling wall. Over here, he said, brushing aside leaves and debris. "This section looks newer, like it was patched in later." He pressed against the stone. It didn't move, but Bombay immediately started sniffing at the dirt beneath it and pawing. Alex dropped to one knee beside them. "There's a seam." Lucian stepped back. "We're on private land, technically, but if this is what we think it is—" "We're not here for looting," Reg said. "If someone comes, just flash your badge." Together, they pried up the stone. Beneath it was a pocket of dry earth and, embedded in it, a square of oil-treated canvas. Reg carefully lifted the bundle free. The cloth gave way with a soft, earthy peel, revealing a small, iron-bound chest. Gary sucked in a breath. "Holy 18th century Etsy shop." Reg knelt beside it, then paused. "Everyone ready?" Lucienne nodded. Alex clicked her flashlight on. Polly cackled, "RIPITOPEN." Reg flipped the latch. The hinges groaned. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, were glints of unmistakable gold. Dozens of doubloons, their edges uneven but gleaming in the filtered sunlight. Alongside them, 3 silver hairpins shaped like flowers, their stems twisted into delicate knots. A slim leather booklet rested on top, sealed with a ribbon. Lucian reached in with gloved hands and lifted it gently. He opened the first page and exhaled. "Isabella Duarte's initials," he said, "and a pressed violet." The first page was a letter, written in dark ink that had bled slightly into the paper's grain. "Dearest Belle, I send this letter not by ship nor sail, but by hope, buried deep as my love for thee. The gold within this chest was won with blood and thunder, but kept always for you. Let others chase their glory, I sought only your gaze. If I fall in battle or storm, know I go willingly, for I've lived more in a single night beneath your window than most men live in all their days at sea. Hide this treasure well, for it carries not just coin, but every kiss I never gave, and every morning I dreamt of waking beside you. Your Bart." No one spoke for a long moment. Reg let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned." Alex's voice was hushed. "It's real." Gary knelt beside the chest. "You guys, we actually found it." Polly shrieked, "Payday! Emotional payday!" Lucian closed the booklet gently. "This isn't just a treasure, this is a confession, a love letter, a history." Reg stood and looked back toward the trail. "Call Mendoza. Tell her to pass the good news to the ministry and the museum. This doesn't belong in a vault. It belongs to people of San Malvino." Gary nodded. "And maybe a little to me." Polly chimed, "MEMEME." Chapter 13. 3 weeks later, the island was a celebratory mess. The San Malvino Historical Museum had partnered with the Ministry of Culture to host a dedication ceremony at the newly designated Lovers Park, a small, sun-drenched stretch of the Duarte land, now cleared and landscaped with benches, bougainvillea, and one carefully preserved ruined springhouse. The treasure had been catalogued, cleaned, and carefully encased in museum glass. Most of it now lived in the center of a Duarte family exhibit downtown, flanked by Bart's letter and Isabella's pressed violet. The rest, about half a dozen doubloons and the iron chest itself, would stay on permanent display in a climate-controlled shadow box tucked into the old stone wall at the park. "This is either the most romantic thing I've ever seen," Gary said, "or the opening to a very cursed Hallmark special." Reg adjusted his sunglasses. "Only one way to find out. Stay too long after dark and see what haunts the picnic tables." "You joke," Gary said, "but I've already filed a paranormal tourism proposal." Lucienne, standing nearby with a fresh cup of lemonade, muttered, "Dear God, that's why the Secretary of Culture canceled his speech and ran away." A small crowd was milling around the dedication stone, where Otto Delmar had just finished giving a brief speech in both English and Spanish, followed by a surprisingly moving haiku. Polly, perched on the back of the ceremonial plaque, shrieked, "Love is dead! Long live the gold!" Reg clapped a hand over his brow. "You gonna say something heartfelt or are we done here?" Alex bumped his arm with her elbow. Give it 5 minutes. Let Gary embarrass himself first. Across the lawn, Gary was approaching Mendoza with a bouquet of tropical flowers, a crooked grin, and a level of confidence that did not match his hair. "Mendoza, Angela, lovely detective," he called, weaving slightly to avoid a passing child with an ice cream cone. "There you are." Mendoza looked up from her phone with a raised eyebrow. "Please don't be allergic to those." "They're for you." Gary held them out with theatrical flair. "A token of gratitude and survival, and maybe something deeper and more mysterious we're both afraid to name." "Gary," he wiggled the bouquet. "You saved my life." It awakened feelings, like deep, pirate feelings. Mendoza stared at him. Polly swooped overhead and shouted, "He's gonna cry!" Gary smiled hopefully. "Maybe this island could use a new power couple. You, me, crime and flowers." Mendoza blinked once. "You smell like bug spray and rum." "It's my signature scent," he said earnestly. "Island musk." She took the flowers, and then, very deliberately, handed them to a passing teenager without breaking eye contact. "Thanks, Gary. Go stand over there." Gary sighed dreamily. Still the hottest rejection I've ever had. Reg watched him trudge back toward the others. "He's gonna try again next week, isn't he?" Lucian took a sip of lemonade. "Oh, absolutely." Nearby, Bombay rolled in the grass, clearly unbothered by either legacy or cursed gold. Polly swooped down beside him, dragging half a sandwich from someone's unattended plate. The plaque near the stone wall shimmered in the sun. It read, "To the undying love of Isabella Duarte and Bartholomew Roberts, may all who seek find something worth more than gold." San Malvino Historical Society. Alex stepped up beside Reg, hands in her pockets. "You know," she said, "we went looking for a murder, and we found a pirate love story." Reg squinted at the sunlight. "Somehow both feel about right for this island." She turned to him with a smile. "Still think this place is cursed?" He glanced at Polly, who was now screaming from a lemon tree. "Mine! Mine! I found it first!" He grinned. "Oh yeah, definitely." The group posed for a quick photo. Reg, Alex, Lucian, Gary, Shannon, and even Mendoza, lured in at the last second by a plate of pastelitos. Bombay sat front and center like a furry black statue. Polly landed on Lucien's head just as the shutter clicked. The picture would later hang in Bongo's bar, next to a faded newspaper clipping about the chest and a new cocktail named the Bart and Belle. Dark rum, lime, and a dash of bitters would become Jimmy's signature drink. As the ceremony wound down and the last rays of sun hit the broken springhouse, the light caught on something glinting in the grass. One final doubloon, half buried, catching the sun like it had waited centuries for one last glance. Polly shrieked triumphantly, "Loot!" This has been Death by Golden Doubloon, a hilarious feel-good cozy mystery. Book 5 in the Island Whodunnit series. Written by Tess Marlowe. Narration produced and directed by Maureen Gazarian. Audio created using 11 Labs multi-voice narration technology. Thank you for listening.